You're Toastmasters, so you must know what I'm talking about. You get to boss people around. People look up to you, they admire you, but it's not always so bright, because you can virtually never make the right decision, because there's always going to be someone complaining. Some of them are even going to say that being a leader is easy. They can do it better, because if you've prepared for an event for half a year, and then you've got everything planned down to the smallest details, just go by the agenda and everything works, right? But what happens if something doesn't? What happens if something goes wrong and you're responsible for this? You know the feeling. Something happens, the time just stops still, and everybody looks at you. It doesn't matter if they're in a different room, you can feel it. They're looking at you. When you're a leader, it is very important to be the master of preparation. But it is also equally important to be a master of improv. I would like to make my point by telling you a story. Let's move to the middle of the sea. We're on a submarine, military submarine, fitted with soldiers. Elite, best of the best. Everything's quiet. The captain gives his order, whistles, because there's an enemy destroyer approaching. We're underwater, and there is a chance that the destroyer's radar may not see us. Everybody's really quiet. We're going to stealth mode. Every piece of equipment that makes sound, engines, ventilators, everything is turned off. Soldiers are holding their breath. And then it happens. One of the soldiers drops a wrench. The tool falls on the floor, bangs on the metal floor. Immediately, the destroyer's radar picks it up. They know exact location of the submarine, and all hell breaks loose. They start bombing. Unfortunately, there's no direct hit. But bombs blowing up in close proximity do a lot of damage. Water is pouring everywhere. Balls are flying from walls, from the floor, from the ceiling, from everywhere. There are wounded soldiers everywhere. The submarine drops 2,000 meters below the surface. Water's pouring. 3,000 meters below the surface, the submarine stops. And now, let's take a time out and think what the crew should not do. What about the man who dropped the wrench? There's no point in bringing him to justice right now. It's neither the time nor the place. They cannot, he cannot just he cannot cry, apologize. He has to work together. Every man counts. The engineers are doing the best they can to get the engine starting and get the submarine just a little bit higher to relieve the pressure. The mechanics are working at the pumps. Every man and every man's hand are at work just getting the water out of the boat. What about the man who dropped the wrench? He is responsible for catastrophe. It is his fault that this happened. But what he can do at that particular moment is give his best. Nothing less, nothing more. Even if he gives up his life in some heroic action to save another crew member, then in the end, it just means that there's 2 hands less to work. 4 days later, 4 long days and long nights later, the submarine gets to the surface. Everybody's safe. When they get to land, the soldier who dropped the wrench is put in front of the military court and is judged by his fellow officers. He gets a warning. Just a warning. Why? Because the officers who are his judges know that sometimes things happen. No matter how well you're prepared, no matter how well things are planned beforehand, well, sometimes just shit happens. And when it does, what you can do, and what is most important to do, is at the exact moment just to give your best and not put the blame on other people. When there's a crisis, you have to work to get out of the crisis. Afterwards, when everything's settled, then we can think what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how can we avoid it in the future. And I'm speaking to you right now, leaders, because if you're ever in such a situation, ask yourself 2 questions. What if I were the man who dropped the wrench? I didn't do it on purpose. I did not do it on purpose, it happened. But right now, all I can do is what anyone else can do, just give my 100%. And when your subordinate drops the wrench, also be aware that sometimes it happens. And I think it's very important, especially in crisis situation, to follow Bruce Lee's advice. Because he said, if you lose money, you lose nothing. If you lose your health, you lose something. But if you lose your cool, you lose everything.